if it's just a general question, if you'll raise your hand. This is for Vicki. Will there be another tour of Sissy's play?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure if we could pull it off again. We were blessed with a lot of funding from it. Utah wants to do a tour, but in truth, I'm not sure. We're trying. We want to do it at the White House, but yeah. but I've had that question before, and I think I'm going to talk to Leslie Wagner and Greg in light of these awards and see if we can't pull something else off.
This one's for Jeb Schenk. What do you think of the sociobiological theory of why gay?
I really don't have an answer for that other than in the biology, when you have different genes being switched on and off, it really has a huge impact on the brain's responses. And that can make you what you are. And then you have to deal with, and we've had so many eloquent statements on, you have to figure out somehow to handle the society and the culture that you're in. I don't know if that answers the person's question or not, but we can't make it just an automatic prediction. There are some tendencies, as we alluded to, and briefly roll through a few of these. Changes in the hormone receptors. There are some genetic effects that pass along through the family, and we actually heard some about that. There are the hormone exposure, both natural and synthetic. That's actually been experimented with a lot in the agricultural industry because of trying to get better animals for stock. However, there's some question on that because you have twins that are both gay. You have, and these are identical twins if you will, you have one that is and one is not. So we're not sure about the hormone impact. It's not really been studied because it's extremely difficult in utero. How does one fetus get a load of hormone and a different load of hormone on the other? I don't have a good explanation for that. I don't know. Okay, and also parts of the Y chromosome can be missing, sometimes significant parts, and that will influence the expression of the sexual characteristics. And we know that other genetic conditions can also contribute, but a lot of this is still very unclear. We just don't have a lot of information on it, although a lot of people are studying it.
I'm going to stick with you two with this next question. How does androgyny fit in to the LGBTQ plus spectrum?
I guess I don't have a firm answer for how does androgyny fit into the LGBTQ plus spectrum. I mean, I think androgyny is a little bit, and I'm certainly not, I'm thinking about it as a definition a little bit more of viewing masculine characteristics. Of course, in biology, androgyny is the effect of androgen hormones is what pushes a biological being to have the appearance of the masculine characteristics. But I guess from what we've heard today and from what we understand, having male characteristics certainly doesn't commit a person to identifying internally as male. So I guess I see it as on one hand, a developmental hormone influence, and on the other hand, not really applicable as how a person would identify.
Does anyone else have?
I can. So I'm assuming we're going off of like androgynous gender identity or style. So gender expression can sometimes fit underneath someone's identity depending on how it applies to them. So, and it also can apply to sexuality. A lot of sexualities have created subcultures surrounding androgyny. So drag is part of that. Butch and stud identity for lesbians and bisexual women is part of that. So it really depends on you. If you like to look a certain way and you don't identify as LGBTQ, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you're a freak. It also, like, you're not required to identify a certain way just because you like dressing or acting a certain way. So it's up to you.
Okay, one more for Dr. Mackey. How is sex in an embryo chosen or determined?
At a base level, your genetic sex is determined by your chromosomes. So your typical female appearance would have the sex chromosomes of XX, and your typical male appearance would have the sex chromosomes of XY.
Vicki, I'm going to look at you on this because maybe you know the answer to this. Was Roger McDaniel a radio personality in Cheyenne in the 60s to the 80s? Does anyone know?
I don't think he was in the legislature, but I don't know if he was I actually truly don't know that. I would like to say, as to the play, the world premiere of the play is actually, and world premiere means that they're gonna actually do the whole production, is in Rock Springs on, I believe, November 10th. Kenny Starling's group is gonna do the play at the Broadway Theater in Rock Springs, so, and I just remembered that, so I apologize, but.
So I might have our hospital CEO weigh in on this next question, as well as maybe Jen Chaney. Why are trans or LGBTQ+ not an additional warning on suicide mental health evaluations in the hospital during a suicide attempt? Trans teens are at a 7.6 times higher risk for suicide and then additional suicide attempts. What help could a trans person get after a suicide attempt here in Vermont? You want to take out?
So I don't know the exact specific protocols that's utilized by physicians and by the nursing team. I do know that there are measures put in place, and there are resources that are offered. I honestly can't tell you from my level exactly what those are. And Dr. Mack might be able to help out with some of those things that are put into place. But I know there are certain measures like one-on-one attention that's provided to an individual who has suicidal ideations.
Thank you. Dr. Matthew, Jennifer, do you want to weigh in on that?
I can hop in, at least from the hospital side of things. I mean, any suicide attempt that we're seeing in the emergency department, as far as the providers go, a lot of times you're going to be considering risk factors when trying to figure out what resources you can provide to that person. And LGBTQ, we all certainly understand, is an increased risk factor. But regardless of whether you can identify those risk factors or not, ensuring the patient's safety, making sure they are medically stable, and then finding the correct psychiatric placement for them, which we rely on our counseling center pretty heavily for. And as far as why it's not an individual risk factor listed, if it's not, I would advocate for it.
Quick question, does our local counseling center, do we know for a fact that they will accept LGBTQ people or not?
Yes.
Hey, hang on, let me break.
Well, I'm retired, but I used to be a part of the mental health system in Warren and here, and there's not a reason that they wouldn't be accepted. I don't know what else to say. There is someone that has, because of our society, has a burden and we can't walk around alone. You know, we need someone that will listen. And so I think the first thing is to help a person talk about whatever is on their heart. And then I was a case manager, not a therapist. So if someone needed help with connecting with different kinds of things, you know, our community's getting better and better at having, hey, here's some people that would love to have someone in their group, their either for fun or discussion, book club. So it just helping to connect, or if there's other things that have gotten tough, and the case manager can help.
But, and I'm asking because I want to make sure if there are Christian counselors in town that refuse to accept LGBTQ,
They wouldn't be.
that they are identified so we know who they are and we don't send people to them.
You know, I would.
Yes, Stephanie.
So I work at High Country Behavioral Health, and we do have LGBTQ affirming clinicians. And I've been working with Wyoming Equality to be on their list that I will be a gender LGBTQ affirming provider, as well as other clinicians inside the facility. So yes, we do offer that.
Excellent.
What is that facility?
High Country Behavioral Health, the counseling center.
Here at the Monmouth?
Yes.
Is there anywhere in Warland?
But we do telehealth services, and there's locations around the state. So I see clients, LGBTQ clients across Wyoming.
There is the Cloud Peak Counseling Center in Warland.
Right.
And
It would be nice if there was a list though, for those of us that work with students. We have a GSA at our high school, and it would be really lovely if we actually had a list of providers that were safe, rather than just hoping that when you send a student to Cloud Peak Counseling, that they may or may not get somebody that is really like-minded and a safe person. It would be very, very helpful for those of us with children or that are teachers, if we could get a list. I would love that so much.
So, there are several directories of LGBTQ affirming providers in the state. So Wyoming Equality is private for safety reasons, but if you reach out to us with information, we can give you a specific name or names and locations. Casper Pride has theirs online, which sounds far away, but they also have all of their telehealth providers. And honestly, so many of UW Family Medicine's providers do telehealth to where it's pretty seamless. I believe also that Hot Springs County is getting a telehealth with the library soon. That's happening in many counties. I don't remember for sure. I thought I heard Hot Springs County, so hopefully I was right. But there are going to be like private options for you if you can't get it at home too.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with you. I have a great-grandchild who is transgender and came out and began medical care at age 14. I am concerned about the state and national laws. Can you address those?
Yes, so many states have basically made it illegal for us to identify the way that we do or to use proper facilities. I recently drove through Kansas and could not stop for a bathroom the entire way there because my birth certificate and my driver's license do not match. So I had no idea which bathroom I was legally allowed to use, and if I was caught sitting down to pee, I was really worried about my safety. Unfortunately, there is not a ton we can do to fix the nation. In Wyoming, our legislators listen to us a lot better than some other places because Wyoming is a small town. We all know each other. Our legislators know when they're impacting people negatively, and a lot of Republicans were very open to supporting and protecting the LGBTQ community during this session. We had tremendous amounts of support from Republicans that we were not expecting support from, to be honest. Wyoming Equality's done a really good job of making sure we stay in touch with folks so we are not pushing people away because they were wrong about one thing. And that we're making sure that we can keep trans kids safe as long as we can. And hopefully until this attack on trans lives ends for at least a little while. So there's not a ton you can do with the national, but making sure that your local spaces are safe, encouraging local businesses that have 2 single-stall bathrooms to just switch to gender neutral is a great way to protect people in the case that we do end up having any kind of restricted laws on bathroom use and facility use. Because for one, that protects a business from a lawsuit if someone gets beat up. It protects trans people from being targeted in bathrooms or arrested for using bathrooms. Basically, it just does a ton more than you expect it to. So if you know businesses that have single-stall restrooms, encourage them to make them gender neutral is like one incredible way to make sure that your child is safe in Wyoming. Supporting and advocating for libraries and schools that are teaching LGBTQ content or allowing youth to research it in their free time is super huge because it makes it so that kids can still learn about those things. Oftentimes school is where we are able to be ourselves if we can't be ourselves at home. I know even with a supportive parent, I had parts of myself that were only at school and that I needed to be able to have there. So just making sure that you're supporting the people who are really putting in the effort for youth in the state, and also working to dispel the rumors in your social circles, maybe at your church, at your book club, at your lunch group if you hang out for lunch with some ladies. Just making sure that everyone there knows that gender affirming care is not being done without parents' permission, pretty much almost anywhere in the country, if not nowhere in the country. There's always at least one parent involved, and even in liberal states like Colorado, there's 2 parents that are required to be involved. Additionally, dispelling rumors about like the concept of grooming. LGBTQ people are not groomed to be the way they are. Adults are not coming to us and telling us we have to be this way. If anything, I had the opposite. When I was a teenager and I looked like a cute little girl, a lot of adult men were coming to me and telling me I shouldn't transition because I was too pretty. So if we want to talk about grooming, it is certainly not happening in our schools, and it is certainly not happening specific to LGBTQ people. Everything that I have experienced has said the opposite, if I'm being completely honest. But just making sure that people are supporting youth and making sure that they have safe places to be themselves are being supported as well, because they are really going under fire for this. There have been quite a few teachers in the state that have been pushed out of their jobs over it. There have been lots of people threatened for supporting even their own children in the state. That law, Chloe's law, actually sought to not only make it a child abuse felony, I believe, to provide gender affirming care as a physician, but also for a parent to seek it. So we need to make sure we're supporting everyone in making sure that youth stay safe, and that we're well funding these services that are serving them, whether that be helping the GSA with fundraisers, whether it be coming to Wyoming Equality events and making sure that we can continue our Safe and Healthy Schools program as well as our healthcare access program. And whether that be supporting like a local Democratic Party, local PFLAGs, Republican legislators who are really putting in the work. We want to make sure that all of those people are valued so that they can push on that message and make sure that the youth know that they're also valued. But I think that the first step is really in making sure your child knows that you love them, that you're willing to fight for them, so, or your grandchild.
Can I add something? And speaking of supporting a local Democratic Party, there's a donation jar in the back.
Just one thing I was going to suggest as a business owner and as somebody who's non-binary, talk to businesses if they do have the similar bathroom situation where it's gender neutral, like single stall bathroom. Put it on your Google listing or whatever. I know I had it on ours, and we had several people who were like, "Thank you. I've needed to pee for like 2 cities." Well, cities, but it was appreciated. Sorry.
Well, I have one more thing too. There is an app or website out as well that shows where safe bathrooms are. I believe it's called Refuge or something like that.
Thank you. And then I do have one more note. There are actually sanctuary states now for gender affirming care where they will not, under subpoena, tell a judge whether or not you sought out gender affirming care for your child or grandchild. Minnesota's working on becoming one. I believe Colorado might be working to become one as well. So there are tons and tons of states that are starting to do it.
And just one more thing, the fact that we're even talking about how people have to fight for where they have to go to the bathroom means that we have to fight hard to make this stop. This is ridiculous. This is something we should not even be having to organize about for anyone. This has to stop. This has to stop. We need to make this stop.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question, and I'm gonna, whoever wrote this question, I'm gonna modify your question, so just, hang with me. Can one of you go over what LGBTQIA stands for and further discuss the A, asexual, aromantic?
I will start with the L. I am not a lesbian. But the L got put first in the alphabet soup because in the 1980s when the AIDS crisis was happening in the larger cities nationwide, the lesbians were the ones that came to the rescue of the gay folks. They were the only ones that would provide health care. They were the only ones that would touch them. The lesbians were the only ones that would provide blood. They were the only ones that would take any sort of care of them because the gays were so hated. And so in the LGBTQ movement, the lesbians have been raised up as the important ones that basically saved everyone. So that's where the L's come from. So I'll let somebody else compare that.
Alright, so lesbian and then gay, this usually stands for gay men or gay folks who are masculinely aligned. Bisexual, meaning that you have attraction to both similar and different genders, and this is more of an umbrella term, so pansexuals, polysexuals, anyone who likes more than one gender essentially is fit into that part of that acronym. And then T stands for transgender, occasionally also stands for transsexual, which is a term only used by some folks. It's more of a reclamatory term than something used by the general population. The Q stands for queer, which is anyone who identifies basically as broadly LGBTQ. Maybe they don't want to label their gender specifically, they don't want to label their sexuality specifically, or maybe they just have a very fluid identity and don't want to put themselves into a box of always identifying as a certain gender, always identifying with certain sexualities. It changes for many people over time. There's a lot of reasons to identify as queer, and it's really one of the least policed identities, so that's a huge part of it. And that's in terms of internal policing, so like someone telling you you can't identify a certain way because of the way you act. The I stands for intersex, and not every person who identifies as intersex will also identify as LGBTQ, so that's important to note. Some folks do identify as cis and straight and tend to just see that more as a medical identity of their own, so they don't always choose to identify as LGBTQ, but if they choose to, it's there. And then the A stands for asexual or aromantic. Aromantic means that you lack a romantic attraction to other people. So this might mean that you still have sex, it might not, depending on who you are, but it means that you don't really seek out a romantic relationship or aren't romantically interested in someone when you see them. You're not like, oh, I want to take them to dinner, I don't want to take them on a date. And that can include people you're sexually attracted to. And asexual, sometimes, so all of these can kind of be mixed and matched. So you can be aromantic and like having sex with a similar gender. You can be asexual and love being in a relationship with someone. So they're all different from each other and they can all be kind of combined. But asexual means that you do not have sexual attraction. This doesn't always mean that you don't have sex. You might be having sex because you want to as part of your relationship. It just means that you aren't sexually attracted to someone, so the reason why you're with them wouldn't be because you want to have sex with them. So that's kind of that explanation.
And then the plus is everything else.
Yeah, the plus typically I think it's
all the rest of you.
It's everything else. Most commonly when the plus isn't there and they add more, two-spirit is frequently added in, pansexual, pangender, panromantic are added in. There's quite a few, but the plus is It's anyone that identifies as broadly queer but specifies their identity a little bit more.
Thank you. Okay. We're gonna do one last question, just because I'm trying to be cognizant of the time. One of the things that we have not spoken about tonight, and I would like someone or multiple someones to address, is why Title IX should or should not apply to trans athletes.
I can take that one since I worked on it a lot. So Title IX says we cannot discriminate on the basis of sex. There was a Supreme Court ruling by a conservative Supreme Court judge that actually said that transgender is included in the basis of sex. So by default, Title IX has to protect transgender people. It's non-negotiable by that ruling. Additionally, a huge part of this controversy has been kind of an understanding that trans girls have an unfair advantage. They've done studies on this. It's only true for the first 6 months that they're on hormone therapy. But estrogen, since it's more, I don't know if this mic is completely, there we go. Since estrogen is actually more well monitored in transgender girls, they're less likely to have hormonal advantages pretty frequently compared to cisgender athletes. Another thing about athletes is that a ton of them are not doing it to compete. They're not doing it to win scholarships, they're not doing it to get money, they're not doing it to be the best. Most of them just like having friends that they see like almost every day. So keeping it for students is crucial to mental health. It's crucial to making sure that not only are these students not being discriminated against and blocked from accessing something, but that they're able to make friends, that they're able to be included, and that they're able to have the natural release of endorphins and all of the wonderful things that come with being part of something.
I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it there. It is 7:45 and we were trying to get everybody out of here by that time. If you still have questions, please stay around afterwards. Please come up to our panelists. I know they would not mind staying another 10, 15 minutes and speaking with people one-on-one.